Hello bookish people, welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan. In today's video we are going to be doing my January wrap up. These are all the books that I read in the month of January. I read 24 books in January and I am so happy about that. It was an amazing reading month. I am filming this right now on February 5th and it's not a good month, okay? It's the 5th day of February. I have not completed one book so far and I'm really hoping to complete one today. And the reason is I'm trying to read How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix and I am in a slump because I'm so bored. Like the first 30% of this book is so boring, but like after the 30% mark, it's like starting to pick up. So like I'm really trying to get into it. But yeah, so I'm a little slumpy right now. But you know what, maybe talking about all the books that I read and loved in January will get me wanting to read again. Also, I've been just super busy with my reselling business, so that has taken up a lot of my time. But yeah, let's get into all the books that I read this month. Let's go over actually my January reading stats first, so I can tell you about all the 24 books that I read. So out of the 24 books that I read, 10 were physical reads, and 14 of those books that I read were through audio. So I listened to them. I listened to audiobooks. And yeah, out of those 10 physical books, 4 of them were mangas, 6 of them were physical books. If you've been on this channel for a while, you know that 2023, I am really trying to start physically reading again because most of the books that I consume are audio, which is great, but I'm also trying to make this my year of fantasy, and fantasy is best enjoyed physically read. So yeah, now we're gonna break them down by genre. I read 6 fantasy books, 6 romance books, 5 mystery thrillers, 4 mangas, 2 literary fictions, and 1 science fiction. My lowest rated book was a 2.5 star. My highest rated book was a 5 star, which I had 3 of. And my average rating for the month was a 3.8 stars because I have really been in a half-star mood. I've been giving everything either like 2.5 stars, 4.5 stars, like a half-star ratings. I don't know why. I just started doing them like last month and now they're my favorite thing ever. So yeah, let's go through all the books. We are going to talk about them in a genre order, and we're going to start with the most read genre, which fantasy and romance are actually tied this month, but we are going to start with fantasy. And I own 4 of the fantasy books that I read this month, but I read 6. So let's talk about the first 2 that I don't own or I don't have with me. The first one is going to be A Sign Here by Claudia Luck. So this book, I listened to the audiobook from my library, so I don't own a physical copy of it. And it also was a book of the month selection. I did not select it, and I'm happy I didn't select it because I rated it 3 stars. In this book, you're following a cast of characters. Our main character is Peyote, and he works in hell, and there is a new coworker, Calamity Ganon, which I just love that because Zelda reference, hell yeah, let's go. So we have Peyote and Calamity Ganon. They work in hell and their job is to get people to sign their souls over, and you get like some sort of like reward or bonus if you get to sign every single family member, like every member of a family, you get them to sign their souls over, and Peyote just needs 1 more member of the Harrison family to sign their soul over to him. So this is a dual timeline book, or like I don't know if a dual timeline is really correct word. It's the same timeline. I mean like dual POV books. So you're following Peyote and Calamity Ganon. You're following them in their journeys through getting people to sign their souls over, and then you're following the Harrison family as they go to their lake house. And honestly, the 2 different stories just felt very separate from each other. There really was no overlap in the stories until the end. So it just felt like, I don't know, there was like a lot going on. It just wasn't my favorite. I think there was a lot of cool concepts in the book, but I didn't really love the execution of it. And yeah, I just wasn't a fan of it. I rated it 3 stars. Honestly, I listened to this again on audio and I kept checking to see how much longer was left of the audiobook. So I was like, can this be over already? Can this be over already? So 3 stars, it was fine, but you could definitely do without it. And the next fantasy book that I read that I don't own a physical copy of, although it is in the mail, I hope it is in the mail because I was a backer of the Kickstarter, and that is Chess in the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I read the ebook, and this is kind of the book that kicked off my year, and oh my god, this was an amazing start to the year. I rated it 5 stars, and honestly, I think this, I know we're only in January, well now we're in February, but I just think this is going to be definitely one of my all-time favorite books and all-time favorite books of 2023 and beyond, because this book was absolutely amazing. This is a adventure-filled fantasy. You're following our main character, Tress, and she is in love with a boy named Charlie, and he gets captured by this evil sorceress, and Tress has to find a way to get off the island that she lives on, because in this kingdom, the king has declared no one is allowed to leave this island. So she is going on this adventure. She has to leave the island and find a way to get to Charlie. Again, been captured by the sorcerers. And what I love about this is the world building in it. I think it is so cool. I also love the narration style, and I love our narrator Hoyd. I have never read a Brandon Sanderson book before. This is my very first one. So a lot of the reviews I've seen were so excited to see Hoyd back. I had no idea who he was, but I still absolutely loved every moment of it. I don't think you need to have any prior knowledge of Brandon Sanderson going into this, or any prior knowledge of the Cosmere, because I definitely didn't. And this got me to kick my butt in gear and read Mistborn. Mistborn has been on my physical TBR for months, and after reading this book, I was like, oh my god, I need to read more. I need to read more. So yes, this was an amazing book. I cannot wait to get my hardcover of it. And what I really specifically love about this is the sea in this book is called a spore sea. And what I loved is it's not just a backdrop for the story, but the spores add so much to the plot that just made the story really interesting as well. And honestly, this is a very adventure-filled story. And I know people like say books like House on the Cerulean Sea or like Legends and Latte is a cozy fantasy, but like this book to me was cozy fantasy. I don't know, this gave me all the cozy vibes, and I rated this 5 stars. I would rate it more stars if I could, because by far, I'm telling you, this is top tier book, probably one of my all-time favorite fantasy books ever. The next book I read this month is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. Or Mandana, yep, I said that right. So in this book, you're following our main character, Mika, and she is a witch. And in this world, which is our world, witches cannot congregate together, they cannot live together, and they don't really need to be seen together because that is how they survive. So Mika pretends to be a witch online, and she's like pretending to be a witch online, but she really is a witch. But it's like one of those things, I'm pretending to be a witch, but we all know witches aren't real, so you don't actually think I am. But then one day someone sees her video and was like, wait, no, she's actually a witch, and we need to hire her because we have 3 children witches, daughter witches, whatever, like little girl witches at our house that need guidance. So she goes there, and it's really, everyone relates this to the House on the Cerulean Sea. And I DNF'd that book, and I didn't really like this book. I don't think the cozy fantasy orphanage trope is for me. This is also like classified as a romance novel. I didn't really care for the romance in this book. I much more think this is like a cozy fantasy more than a romance. I didn't really like the guy in this, and I didn't really care about the romance. I don't even remember what happened in this book. 3 stars. Next we have Throne of Glass by Sarah J Maas, and this book is super hyped up. I finally read Sarah J Maas. I own the whole Throne of Glass series. I own the whole ACOTAR series. I own the first 2 books in the Crescent City series, and I have read 0 of them, but now I have read one down. How many more to go? I didn't even know the plot to this book going into it, because I feel like it's one of those classic YA books that is so hyped up that people just kind of like assume you know the plot or feel like they don't need to say it because so many people have already said it, but then that turns out that no one says it, and I had no idea what it was. But it is a really interesting concept. You have this assassin, and she's in these salt mines. She gets summoned to this castle for the king, and she's going to participate in this assassin competition, and the winner of it has to like be the king's assassin and servant. And then I think people like can die in the competitions too, so honestly looking at this in like a 2023 lens kind of gives you like a little bit of Squid Game vibes. But overall I really liked it. Again, it is a classic YA fantasy. It has those classic YA fantasy feels. You have the love triangle, and you have like the badass female, and I overall really enjoyed it. I do have like a little bit of criticisms in this book. So first of all, I think some of it dragged on a little in some places. And then also too with the assassin competition, I thought that was like the really interesting part of the book, but some of it was just kind of glazed over, and then there's more focus like on the characters rather than the action of the assassin competition. So I feel like that was a little bit of a missed opportunity. I really felt like this book was a setup for the rest of the series, which obviously it is the first book in the series, and I'm sure the series is just going to get better from here. And yeah, I overall really enjoyed this one, and I rated it 4 stars. The next 2 fantasy books I read are Ninth House and Hellbent, both by Leigh Bardugo. These are the first 2 books in the Alex Stern series, and the only 2 books out. I think it is going to be a trilogy, but I don't think there's any word on when the last book is coming out. So first, let's talk about Ninth House. I read this from December to January. It took me a while to read this one because I really wasn't connecting with it. I started reading it on my Kindle, and I wasn't really like too like, it was okay. I enjoyed it, but it was just okay. And then I switched to the audiobook, and that was the only way I was going to finish this book. And it was okay. I don't know what to say. It was very character driven, and like what I said this in my January haul when I was talking about picking up Hellbent. I was kind of giving you a mini review of Ninth House as well. So like in this book, I feel like if you look at the synopsis and you summarize all the events that happened, because after I read the book, I went and read a summary of it. I like all the events that happened, and like, you know, it's interesting. But then when I got into the reading of it, it was very tedious and I was kind of bored by it. So yeah, I just wasn't really connecting with it. The only reason I really read Hellbent is because I had pre-ordered it before even finishing Ninth House. So I just kind of assumed I was going to love Ninth House and I pre-ordered Hellbent. But this book I actually did enjoy a lot more than Ninth House, so I am really glad that I decided to read it and pre-ordered it. This one I rated 4 stars. This one is definitely more action-packed and plot-driven, which is why I think I liked it a lot better. Also, now in this one, all the characters have kind of come together and they're friends now. So like in this one, you're kind of getting to know the characters, they're forming their friendships. And for example, like Turner and Alex aren't really friendly in this book, but then in this book, you know, now they're kind of friends and they're working together and it's a better relationship. So I think that's why I enjoyed this one a lot more. And yeah, I would definitely recommend this. If you didn't really love Ninth House, I would still recommend moving on to a Hellbent because I think you'll like this one a lot more. Now we're moving on to a romance where I also read 6 books. The first one we're going to talk about is X's and O's by Amy Leah. This is the only one that I don't own a physical copy of. I read the ebook from my library. And in this book, you're following our 2 main characters, Tara and Trevor, although it is just like a single POV. It's just from Tara's point of view. In this book, you're following Tara and she moves into Trevor's apartment. She is his new roommate because if you read Set on You, they're interconnected standalones. So I think you would understand it more if you read Set on You. I personally did not read Set on You. I only read X's and O's. So basically, she moves into Trevor's apartment and he is just kind of this playboy playing the field. And she is a hopeless romantic who loves romance books. She's also a book influencer on Instagram, and she does also like, I don't think she's on YouTube, but she does like Instagram lives. Anyway, this is a roommate romance, also kind of like friends to lovers. It is also a very slow burn romance as well. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. I rated it 4 stars. I'm not really someone who typically loves slow burn romance because I just like get on with it type of thing. But I really like this one because you really got to see the development of their relationship. I enjoyed watching them kind of build their relationship, become friends, and then realizing their feelings for each other. So I could definitely see how some people might be a little bored by this book because there's really not much action in terms of the romance until the end of the book. But overall, I really enjoyed that. I would say my criticisms of the book is the main character, Tara, is so cringe at sometimes. Like sometimes you're reading this book and you get secondhand embarrassment from the way she acts. And I just, oh my God, some of it is just so cringy. Like there's literally one time like she wants to stage like a meet cute moment, like reunion with this guy. So she's like stalking him outside of work and like asks Trevor to like sit with her while she's waiting for this guy to exit his work building so she could stage an accidental run-in. And I don't know, a lot of it was very cringe. Oh yeah, I guess that's the other premise to the book is Tara's a hopeless romantic and she's trying to have her second chance romance trope in real life. So she's going through a list of her ex-boyfriends and trying to reconnect with them to have that second chance romance come true for her. But then they end up falling in love and it's really cute. And what I really love about this is Trevor's a firefighter and that is just, you know, yeah, this book I really enjoyed and I rated it 4 stars. I would recommend it, but I would recommend reading Set on You first because I didn't do that and I kind of wish I did. The next 2 books I read are both by the same author and that is Christina Lauren. I read Twice in a Blue Moon by Christina Lauren. This was my lowest rated book of the month at 2.5 stars. And then I read The Honey Don't List also by Christina Lauren. So I guess this is an author duo. I've been referring to her as a singular person, but they are a duo, Christina and Lauren. And this book is the first one I read, so we'll talk about this one. This was actually the 3rd Christina Lauren book I have ever read. And I rated it 2.5 stars and I was like, Christina Lauren is just not for me. I do not enjoy her romance books because previous to this, the other 2 have been rated 3 stars. In this book, you're following Sam and Tate and it is just kind of a whirlwind romance. They meet when they're on vacation as teenagers. They have kind of this whirlwind, I can pronounce that word, whirlwind romance, and then something happens and they don't talk for years, and then like 14 years later or something, they see each other again as adults. Tate is now a famous actress and Sam has written the screenplay of her newest movie and she can't quit the movie because this is kind of the big break of her career. And I overall didn't really love this book. I rated it 2.5 stars because I really hated Sam. He is probably the worst book boyfriend in all of book boyfriend history. The thing that he does, the reason they stopped talking, to my opinion, is just completely unforgivable. And his reasoning for why he did it, like I understand it's like trying to be like, oh, like the reasoning for why he did what he did is like you have to forgive him, but no, like you could have figured another way for that situation, to get money for your situation and what you did. And it was just, oh my God, it's just completely unforgivable. And not only is it unforgivable, and she forgives him, but she forgives him and so easily. Like, he never grovels. It's just like, okay, you screwed me over, but it's okay, we're fine now, I still love you. Like, what? Just no. I just did not like this book, and 2.5 stars. 2.5 stars is honestly generous for the way this man acted. And then the next book I read by her, The Honey Don't List. This one I actually rated 4 stars. I quite enjoyed The Honey Don't List by Christina Lauren. I really liked it because it was, I don't watch HGTV, but it's definitely, this book is kind of like inspired by Chip and Joanna Gaines. Not that they really have relationship problems behind the scenes. I don't really know anything about them, but you can obviously tell that is who the book is kind of based on. So it's about these 2 like HGTV stars, but not actually HGTV, but fictional HGTV stars, and they are married. They have this show together, but they secretly hate each other. And it's about their 2 assistants who go on a book tour with them, trying to keep their marriage together so they can keep the PR looking good for them, and the assistants kind of fall in love with each other. Honestly, it's a pretty forgettable book. Like, I can't really tell you much about what happened in this book because I read this kind of near the beginning of the month. But I can tell you, I did enjoy my experience reading it, and it was a 4-star read. So yeah, I mean, I would probably be fine to really just like unhaul all of Christina Lauren's book, including the one that I liked. So I don't really think she's for me. I probably won't be continuing her. Glad I found 1 4-star by her, but like 1 4-star out of 4 books, just no, I will not be continuing that author. The next romance book I read is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is the 3rd time I tried to read this book. When I originally bought this book, I took it to the beach and it got wet, and that's originally why I DNF'd it, because look at those pages, just no. Then I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to read it via audiobook. So then I tried listening to the audiobook, and I was working while I was listening to it, and I kind of zoned out. So then I was just kind of missing things, and I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna DNF this because I wasn't paying attention. I don't feel like re-listening to it. Well, a couple months passed. I decided let's re-listen to it because I'm really trying to read all the romance books on my physical TBR, because it is my 2023 goal to really crack down on my physical TBR and read my books. So yes, I decided to give this book another shot, and I actually really enjoyed this book. I rated it 4 stars. I thought this was just a really fun, lovely book. There's really nothing bad to say about it. I just really enjoyed it. I mean, I don't really have strong opinions on this book. I know so many people say this is like their favorite book ever. I personally don't feel that way, but I am glad that I read it. I probably will be getting rid of my copy just because look at the pages, but I might pick up a newer copy just to have on my shelves. I don't know. We shall see. The next romance book I read this month is Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. This is one that I read physically, and I really enjoyed this book a lot. I rated this 4.5 stars. This is such a cute romance, and it's a friends to lovers romance, which if anybody knows me, you know that I do not like friends to lovers romance, but I think the reason that this one particularly worked for me is because it was ex-best friends, like enemies to lovers. So they used to be best friends, but then they're ex-best friends. So it's kind of like an enemies to lovers situation mixed with friends to lovers, which honestly is not my new favorite trope. Ex-best friends to lovers. It's the best. So this is also a YA romance, which I'm not typically a YA romance reader, especially at this point in my life being 24. But this one was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this. It was also like a really short read. It went by really quickly. I just love Talia Hibbert's writing style. I love her sarcasm and her wittiness, and the sarcasm and the wittiness doesn't just come through in the dialogue between the characters, which is just top tier. It also comes across in their inner monologues, which is amazing. And also there's just a really great cast of characters, the side characters as well. So yes, I really enjoyed this, and I rated it 4.5 stars. The only reason I took a half-star rating off is because I didn't really like, well, not that I didn't really like, but my one criticism is I was like, when they were finally trying to get together, the girl was just being so like, I don't trust any guys. Like, you know what I mean? She was just being so like not wanting to trust him and like get with him. I'm like, girl, just say yes, just date him, be happy. You know what I mean? I feel like she was just kind of taking too long to get to that point, and I was getting annoyed. So that's why I rated it 4.5 stars. But overall, I really, really, really enjoyed this, and I highly recommend this. Even if you're not a YA romance reader, you have to read this one. And the last romance book I read this month is Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrane. This one I rated 3.5 stars. I enjoyed my experience listening to this, but this book, and also I just want to preface this, it is a Christmas romance. I read a Christmas romance in January, although I don't really feel like you would have to read this at Christmas time, because yes, there are Christmas elements to it, but I feel like it's more of a winter romance than a Christmas romance. I thought it was totally fine to read in January. You're following our main characters, Ellie, Jack, and Andrew. So let's just talk about them, because it's actually just like one perspective. So I always say you're following our 2 main characters. I just mean your 2 love interests. So we have Ellie, and she is working at a coffee shop, and the landlord of the coffee shop comes in. His name is Andrew, and he proposes to her like, hey, I have like a $2 million inheritance that I want the money for, and the only way for me to get my inheritance is to get married. So will you marry me, and I will give you 10% of it, which is $200,000. And she's like, oh my God, hell yeah, because she is kind of down on her luck right now and she desperately needs money. So she's like, okay, let's get married. So they go to spend Christmas with his family, and then his sister is actually a girl that she had a one-night stand with the year prior. And it wasn't just any one-night stand. It was like, oh my God, magical night, we fell in love one-night stand, and then we never talk again type of one-night stand, which is a trope I'm realizing I really enjoy, because back in December I read Welcome to Winterville by Carrie Elks, which was similar. It was about like this guy and this girl, and they had like a one-night stand that was super magical and never talked again until a year later they saw each other. That really works for me. I don't like second chance romance, but I do like one-night stand, then year later reunite. That trope definitely works for me. So yeah, it's a really cute premise. It is a Christmas sapphic romance, which there's definitely not enough of. But what I did not like about this book is I just felt like Jack, who is the girl, her like love interest in this book, her name's Jacqueline, short for Jack, or no, Jack, short for Jacqueline. I just felt like she was super toxic, and I just did not like her. There was definitely a lot of deceit and betrayal in this book. If you don't mind me potentially spoiling it for you, I will put just like spoiler down here. So if you don't want to listen to my spoilers, you can skip over this part. But for those of you who don't care, who have already read it, like, let's vent about this. So what I do not like about this book is like how much deceit there is. So when Ellie is alone with Jack, Jack always asks her like, why are you marrying my brother, and like stuff like that, or like, how did this even happen? And Ellie never tells Jack that the relationship is fake. That's honestly what their conflict is at the end of the book, is when Jack finds out that her and Andrew's relationship is fake. And it's kind of like, why wouldn't you just like tell her that it was fake? Because Jack ends up hooking up with Ellie while she thinks her brother is engaged to her. So it's kind of like, you think that your brother's fiance is cheating on him with you. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, why would you do that to your brother? I felt like there was a lot of deceit there. Like, I would understand them like kind of having that secret relationship if she knew it was fake and her brother was just doing it for the inheritance. I get that. But to like not know that it was fake and still want to hook up with Ellie, I just thought was like so uncalled for. And the third act conflict at the end, I also really did enjoy. Like, okay, where I'm going to read you like what I hated about this book. This is really what solidified that this could not be a 4-star for me. I think I don't know if I rounded it up or down on Goodreads, but this is on page 339. So this is basically after the third act conflict, Ellie goes and she proclaims her love for Jack in front of all these people at Jack's soft opening for her cafe or whatever she was doing. And Jack basically is like, it doesn't want anything to do with her. And so Ellie walks out very upset. Jack runs after her, and then this is what she says to her. She goes, that was pretty humiliating back there. And she goes, I'm so sorry, Jack. The last thing I wanted to do was embarrass you at your event. She goes, oh, I wasn't. This is a soft opening. Everyone there was a friend. I meant that it was very humiliating for you. And I just didn't like that, because one of the things that Jack said when she was mad at Ellie for deceiving her was that she was like, oh, like, it's so embarrassing, like, blah, blah, blah. Like, I thought I was a terrible person for wanting to be with the girl that my brother was with. And it's like, okay, so like Ellie, you feel like Ellie humiliated you, so like, did you just like reject her in front of all those people so that you could humiliate her back? Like, the fact that she pointed that out and she's like, that was really humiliating for you. Like, I absolutely hated that. I was like, oh my God, this girl is so toxic. Like, she's not only a bad sister, but she's just like extremely toxic. And what is the appeal? What is the appeal of this girl? And then also too, I think like the reason why that they ended their one night stand the way they did is like there's like this whole miscommunication that happens with that, and I feel like Jack gets off the hook for it so easily for what transpired then. Okay, again, let's just get into spoilers. I'm already putting spoiler right here. So like Jack is like married, or Jack's married to this girl, and the girl is polyamorous, so she's totally fine with Jack having a one-night stand. But Jack's in the shower and Ellie opens the door to her like her camper, and the girl's there. She's like, oh my God, I'm Jack's wife. Hey, like, I've told her to have a one-night stand. I didn't think she'd actually do it. And so it's like this whole miscommunication. Ellie's like, wait, this girl's married, but like it turns out they're in a polyamorous relationship. Ellie didn't know that, but I feel like Jack is off the hook so easily for that situation. And then just like, I don't know, I really did not like Jack. Not a fan of Miss Jacqueline. Now we're gonna move into mystery thrillers, which was my third most read genre. I read 5 mystery thrillers in the month of January. So the first one, actually this is the last book I read this month, but it is Finley Donovan is Killing It by Elle Casamano. This is the first book in the Finley Donovan series, and I wanted to do a reread of the first two, and I wanted to read them physically because the first time I read them was via audio, and I read this one and oh my god, I loved it. I rated it 5 stars the first time, and the second time was also a 5-star experience. I absolutely loved this, and I kind of forgot some of the things that happened in this book, and so it was really fun to kind of reread it, and I felt like it kept that magic. I guess because there was so much time between the first read and the second read and I forgot some things, the magic was there again for me, and I really enjoyed this. And then I started reading the second one in January, but that read has kind of blended into February, so I will be talking about it in February. But yeah, highly recommend that one. I'm super hyped up, so I'm sure if you're watching this video, you kind of know what it's about. But essentially, Finley gets accidentally hired as a hitwoman, and the mafia gets involved, and it just spirals out of control from there. The next mystery thriller I read this month is Luckiest Girl Alive by Jessica Knoll. So I really wanted to read this book so that I could watch the Mila Kunis movie, because I'm just like somebody, if I know the movie is based on a book, I have to read the book first before I watch the movie. And oh my god, this is the most messed up book like I have ever read. Like, this is on par with Good Me Bad Me by Ali Land, which I read 2 or 3 months ago, and I talked about how that was the most messed up mystery thriller book I've ever read, or just book in general. This is like equal to that. And so in this book, you're following our main character. I honestly like forgot her name now. I don't know, it just it's one ear out the other. And she basically goes through a really traumatic situation, and then more traumatic stuff happens. Definitely look up trigger warnings for this book. After reading the book, I was like, oh my god, this is a movie. Like, I was honestly shocked that Netflix would choose something with this much terrible things happening, this much traumatic things happening, and turn it into a movie. I rated it 3 stars. I can't say that it was an enjoyable experience because of everything that happened. Also, the movie was very hard to watch because watching those traumatic things transpire on screen in real life, everything was just, it was 3 stars. You could definitely skip this one. The next book I read was Someone We Know by Sherry Lapina. This is my 3rd Sherry Lapina book. The first one I rated 3 stars, the second one 5 stars, and the 3rd book I read by her, 5 stars. So we're on a good trend. It went 3 to 4 to 5. So this is a domestic thriller, which I really love domestic thrillers. You're following this neighborhood, and there is this married couple in the neighborhood. They're kind of like the hot it couple of the neighborhood, and the wife goes missing, and it's about our main character trying to figure out what happened. And it's a multi-POV, which I really love about Sherry Lapina books, is multi-POV, and they honestly remind me almost of like an Ellen Hilderbrand novel, but make it mystery thriller. So I really enjoyed this book a lot. It was a really fun domestic thriller, and yeah, I just had a really amazing time reading it, and I highly recommend. The next mystery thriller I read this month is What Lies in the Wood by Kate Alice Marshall. This was my book of the month January selection, and I was debating on picking this one up from book of the month. The real reason I decided to choose this as my add-on, because my main pick was Lunar Love, I chose this as an add-on, and the reason was because I looked at the Goodreads review, and everybody said the twist on this was a jaw-dropping. What are you talking about? Have you never read a mystery thriller before? Like, I'm so confused, like, why they said it was jaw-dropping. This was such a predictable mystery thriller. I predicted it from the premise, like just reading the premise of the book. So basically, okay, let me read you the premise. Naomi Shaw used to believe in magic. 22 years ago, she and her 2 best friends, Cassidy and Olivia, spent the summer roaming the woods, imagining a world of ceremony and wonder, the goddess game. The game became an obsession and refuge for the 3 girls. The sanctuary was suddenly shattered when Naomi was attacked. Miraculously, she survived her 17 stab wounds and lived to identify the man who hurt her. The girls' testimony put away a serial killer wanted for murdering 6 women. They were heroes. And they were liars. For decades, the friends have kept a secret that might be worth killing for, hidden in the forest, but now Olivia wants to tell the whole story. Then she goes missing, and Naomi sets out to find out what really happened in the woods, and no matter how dangerous the truth turns out to be. I predicted the twist just by reading the synopsis. So in my head, I was going into it, I was like, oh, like that's like, I kind of predicted it. So I was like, oh, it can't be that. But it was that. Like, it was that. And oh my and the people in this book are so unlikable. Like, it's just everything about this book, no. 3 stars. And 3 stars, and now that I'm looking back in retrospect, was generous, because this is part of the reason why I'm in a book slump, because it took me so long to listen to the audiobook for this, because I was just never really interested. And then when the predictable things kept on happening, it's like... And then also, too, there's like this one person in here, and it's like a identity reveal, and it's like, okay, even that was so predictable. Like, even like the red herring was predictable. It was just like everything about it. I just no, and it's fine to have a predictable mystery thriller. Like, I have read like ones that I've predicted the ending to them, but they were still enjoyable. This one wasn't. You could definitely do without it. And the last mystery thriller I read is The Villa by Rachel Hawkins. This book I rated 3 stars. I was so looking forward to this book. It's one of my most highly anticipated mystery thrillers of 2023. It came out in January, And I have loved Rachel Hawkins' 2 previous works, Reckless Girl and The Wife Upstairs. I rated those respectively 4 and 5 stars. And this one I rated 3 stars. Nothing on page is bad. There's no reason why that it's not a 4 or 5 stars on page. It's what's lacking in the book. The book is just way too short, and I feel like the most mystery thriller-esque part of the book was completely glazed over, and it didn't make sense. Like, in what world is this a mystery thriller? It's literally just like a contemporary fiction. In this book, it's like a dual timeline, yeah, mystery thriller. You're in the present day timeline. You're following these 2 best friends, and they're both authors. They rent this villa in Italy, and this villa, though, has a sinister past, and they're going there to write like these books that, you know, they're authors, they're writing books. And in the past timeline, it also takes place at the same villa, and it's kind of Daisy Jones and the Six Fives. It is sex, drugs, rock and roll, and ends in murder. In present day timeline, the authors that are there kind of get drawn into the mystery of the murder that happened at the villa. 3 stars. It was just, I was really hoping for like some demonic stuff happening, some like spooky stuff, some actual mystery thriller stuff. It was literally just contemporary fiction. There's nothing interesting about it. Next, we're gonna go over the 4 mangas I read, which is Spy Family. I read volumes 5, 6, 7, and 8. And I've already talked about this series a lot on this channel. Very short synopsis of it. You have Lloyd, who is a secret spy. He needs to infiltrate this school to get close to his target. The only way to get in that school, obviously, is to have a kid. He doesn't have a kid. He goes to the orphanage. He adopts Anya. Anya is a telepath. He doesn't know Anya is a telepath, but since she's a telepath, she can read minds. She knows he's a spy. Then he needs a fake wife to get into the school because it's a very, like, preppy private school, and you need to have a perfect family. So then he marries this city hall worker named Yor, who is secretly an assassin. He doesn't know that she's an assassin. She doesn't know he's a spy, but Anya knows that she's an assassin and he's a spy. There you go. That's my brief synopsis of it. So yeah, here we have volumes 5, 6, 7, and 8. I'll just give you my star ratings for them. This one I rated 4 stars. This one I rated 5 stars. This one I rated 3.5 stars, and this one I also rated 4 stars. What I really love about this series is when it really focuses on the mission and you're following Anya in the school and trying to, you know, make progress on the mission. The ones that I kind of get bored or don't really care as much about are the things that don't pertain to the mission. Like there's a whole chapter that basically just about Yor learning how to cook and be more domestic. It's like that I don't really care about as much. So I think that was in the volume that I rated 3.5 stars. But the things that pertain to the actual mission, I really enjoy those. And the one I rated 5 stars is that one. The majority of the manga, like, chapters in there pertain to the actual mission. That's just why I really enjoyed that one. So overall, I really, really love this. I love all the characters, and I don't really read manga. This is the first manga that I have ever read, and I highly recommend it. Even if you don't read manga, I think you would really enjoy this. Next, we're going to be getting into the next category, which is literary fiction. I read 2 literary fiction books this month. Let's talk about them. So the first one I read is Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austen. I talked about this one, I feel like, a decent amount in my book haul, but in this book you're following our main character Gilda, and she has mental health problems. She suffers from anxiety, paranoia, and depression. She is also a lesbian and an atheist, and the only reason that is relevant is because she ends up getting a job as a secretary of a church, she's a secretary at a church that is a very, like, anti-gay, homophobic church, and also she's an atheist. She doesn't even believe in God, and, you know, she's working at a church, and she's, like, kind of living this, like, secret life because she doesn't want them to know that she's an atheist, and she also doesn't want them to know she's a lesbian because, like, obviously, like, why would she? They don't believe in those things. But anyway, I really enjoyed this book. I rated it 4 stars. I read it via audiobook, so I listened to it, and then I went out and bought a physical copy because I really wanted to annotate it. The parts where about her inner monologue, where we're really focusing on the way she thinks because of her anxiety and her paranoia and her depression, a lot of that stuff I need to reread and annotate it. And because I think if you suffer from anxiety, a lot of, like, her process, the way she thinks about things, is kind of understandable and relatable. She definitely spirals out of control, and it's not really, like, a healthy way of thinking, but it is something that if you suffer from it, you, like, understand where she's coming from, and it's cool to have that representation in a book. The next literary fiction book I read is one I am scared to review. That is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zivin. I rated this book a 3 star. This is a book that absolutely everybody's obsessed with and everybody loves, but I just could not really get into it. I think maybe I shouldn't have listened to the audiobook for it. Maybe I need to reread it, and I actually kind of do want to reread it, and I want to do a physical rereading of it because I think maybe the audiobook just wasn't the route to go. I don't know. I didn't really like this book. I didn't really find any of the characters to be very likable, and it wasn't even that I was bored by the video game stuff. Honestly, I found that stuff quite interesting because I'm not really someone who played a ton of video games, but I always kind of had a Nintendo, like a DS or a Switch or a GameCube or whatever it is. And my brother always played video games, so I always kind of grew up like with those surrounded, like video games surrounding me. So that part to me was interesting. I just didn't find the characters to be very likable. And then there's also, this book is so depressing. There's so much traumatic things that happen in this book. Our characters go through so much trauma, and after a while it just feels like you're just putting in trauma for the sake of it, making the book sad and adding trauma to the book. Like, it didn't feel like every piece of trauma had a purpose to it. It just felt like sometimes you're just adding it in there to be in there and just make it a sad book. So yeah, I rated this 3 stars, but I haven't seen one person say one bad thing about this. So I'm like, is it me? Is there something wrong with me? Do I need to do a physical reread of this book and maybe I will change my mind? We will see. But as you can see, so many people loved it. It did win Book of the Year from Book of the Month. So, and I also think it did win a Goodreads Choice Awards category as well. I don't know if it was like a debut novel winner or like a literary fiction winner, but it won something from there. The very last book that we're going to review is my science fiction book that I read this month, and that is the Kaju Preservation Society by John Scalzi. So in this book, you're following our main character, and it takes place at the beginning of the pandemic, but don't worry, it's not really like a pandemic style book. It's just that is the circumstances for what leads our character into taking this job. So he's working at this food delivery company called Food Mood, and he is he works in their office building for it, but he gets demoted to being a deliverator, which basically means he is now the delivery man. And he goes and delivers food at somebody who is a prior acquaintance to him, somebody from long ago in his past. And the guy was like, hey, like, do you really want to be doing this? Because I think I have a job for you. And he was like, oh my God, yes, give me your job that you have for me. And the job is, he says it's an animal rights organization. He goes there, the animal rights organization takes place in another world, and it is a Kaju Preservation Society. I didn't know what a Kaju was. I had to Google it because apparently it is something from like Japanese like folklore, Japanese like fiction. You know, this is like it's a known thing. What a Kaju is, I didn't know what it is. It's kind of like Godzilla in a sense. So it is just kind of about him acclimating to it, and then you have all these nice side characters, and I just really enjoyed this book a lot. It is a science fiction, but I think it's a really great beginner science fiction because I'm someone who's very intimidated, especially by adult sci-fi, because I feel like a lot of the concepts and the terms just go over my head. That was not the case in this book. I found it to be really enjoyable. I loved it. This is a book that would turn into a perfect movie. It's very short. It's under 300 pages. And again, it's really just a breeze to read. This is one that I read the ebook from my library, loved it so much, so I went out and bought the physical copy to represent the one sci-fi that I actually really love on my shelves. And yeah, a lot of fun, highly recommend, and I rated it 4 stars. So those are all the books that I read in the month of January. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Subscribe and like down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.